Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this summer episode, Settlewise Summer, of the Lending Leaders Podcast, sponsored by Settlewise.
Yeah.
I'm trying to mention our new brand as much as possible here. So I'm Jim Paolino, CEO and co-founder of Lodestar, joined with Elena Gardner, AMP, Director of Revenue at Lodestar. Elena, we were talking in the first episode, started a title company, Settlewise. So, now it was probably 9 months ago to a year where I came and said, hey, we started this business. We have to figure out what to call it. We need to brand this. We have to, actually create something that will work within it. I talked earlier about phase one of three that we went through. Phase one was a proof of concept. We passed that stage. Now phase two is actually create our brand that we own.
Yeah.
So what was your reaction when you kind of got that task?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's always really fun to get to create a brand. I think when we did it with Lodestar, we had this, we did a rebrand for Lodestar like 3 years ago at this point. And we had such an existing brand, right? Like there was something to start off of versus this time it was, we don't know what this company is called. For a while, there was a joke logo going around, which was the Lodestar sextant with a mustache saying not Lodestar title.
Yeah. We knew we didn't want to call it Lodestar title. We wanted a little distance.
And I think the distance when we first started the branding was much greater than what it's ended up being. We just, I think, realized that for our core values and who we were, they were going to be more closely tied than originally intended, which is totally acceptable. It was just interesting to kind of go through that process and trying to figure out who this company is. And
I think a lot of that was kind of what I went through personally, too. I felt of like, oh, no, I need to talk about Settlewise, or I need to talk about the title company and do this in a way that's just upfront and organic, right? We can't really grow this in the shadows. At the end of the day, it's just not going to work, and it's not really who we are. So I remember at one point, our working name was 9th Street Title, which was the street I lived on when I started Lodestar 11 years ago in New York City. I was talking to a couple, our mentor group that we work with, told them the name and they said, Jim, that is horrible. That is an awful name. It will never rank for anything. It cannot be its standalone entity. You need a name that you could eventually grow and be its own thing. So that was kind of how we started, right? And I want to give a big shout out on this podcast to Kaylin Stewart. We've worked with throughout in her company, Riot, her marketing company. She sent us some great content and steps about naming and branding that we went through and used, which was one of our most fun meetings of the year.
I think so too. Yeah. I think we've kind of created, this really good process for not only just naming things, but coming up with new concepts and all of that, which is, and I think I have to give you credit for this, is bad ideas only. So we set a timer for 5 to 15 minutes, depending on what we're doing, right? And saying, give us everything that's terrible and let's go with that. And I think that really helps get a lot out there.
Yeah, because volume is your friend at this point, right? You want as many things out there. And also, if you're not tied to what's good or what's going to work, I think you're more likely to kind of get creative.
Yeah.
And I remember we should have looked at the list before this, too.
It was bad.
I remember at one point, I also asked ChatGPT about names, too. And one that came up with Speedy Deed.
Speedy Deed was a
You all had to talk me out of that one. I was like, we could be the Jiffy Lube of title.
Absolutely not.
It could make sense. Like, there's a lane for Speedy Deed. Speedy Deed, Speedy Deed. That should have been one of our vocal warm-ups earlier.
There we go.
But I got talked off the Speedy
Absolutely
Deed
not.
ledge at one point. And then the best of our worst names, do you remember?
God, no.
Resettlement.
Oh, yeah, Resettlement.
Resettlement.
Yeah.
Not politically correct as a name for an organization.
Yeah, it just, not great.
Hilarious, Real Estate Settlement. That's kind of how real estate happened. Remax happened as well. Maybe not hilarious, but because obviously resettlement is not.
It's not a good thing.
No, not a good thing. One of those inadvertent bad names. But I think at one point we got to Title Smart or Settle Smart or something. And
we started really honing in, I think, on what we wanted to convey, right? And there are some restrictions, right, around being a title company. We knew we wanted to be national. So in Pennsylvania, you can't use the word title, right?
Yeah.
So title being in the name was not an option from the start.
Yep.
Which is how I think we started. We were like, well, we like the word settlement.
Yep.
and over deed and over all of those things. And we eventually decided to go into we want to be smart.
We wanted to show expertise, right? Wisdom, sage, titles. I think sage came up at some point too. We wanted to show that we're the closing cost experts. So now we want to be the transaction experts too.
Yeah.
And I remember actually this was one idea that not only the name, but stuck with me. Should have mentioned it in the last episode when we were looking for different businesses and different things that Lodestar could grow into. One of our mentors, Mel Beata, and if you're the closing cost experts, what if you took cost out of it? So we're just the closing experts. And I think at one point I put that on a screen when I was announcing this to the company of, no, we're not just the closing cost experts now, we can become the closing experts. Because that means we start a title company. Part of what kind of led us to that, and that expertise I think came through with the overall idea for the name. And the name is just the beginning of the branding process.
Yeah.
Right? We picked a name, felt good about it,
yes,
had to trademark it, and now we actually had to create the brand around it.
So working with Kaylin and her team over at Riot, and I do want to briefly give a shout out to Fiona, who actually came up with the Settlewise name. Good job, Fiona. She's on our team, Fiona Flanagan. Ooh. But so we got to work very closely with Kaylin and her team, doing a series of exercises to ask us really what our brand was, right? And what we wanted to convey before you get into colors and fonts and logos is like, what do you want to actually convey with this organization? And I think that's the one thing that sticks out to me is your brand isn't just a visual representation, but it's also who you are within the organization and how you show yourselves to the world.
Yeah.
And I think we've developed that really well with Lodestar. So to take that and be like, okay, well, we want Settlewise to be its own thing, but also still have core values of Lodestar because at the end of the day, everyone is still everyone working on it at that time was a Lodestar employee.
And I think the Lodestar experience and the rebranding of Lodestar really informed this because we knew that it takes a while to do this. It's important to do it well because you don't want to do it that often in terms of rebranding or changing a brand. And you're kind of stuck with the brand for better or for worse for a while. So it was something that we invested a lot of time and energy at the beginning to really get right.
And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed, and I'm happy if anyone ever wants to go through this, is kind of how we transitioned through the logos and kind of went through really what it is. It's the Settlewise logo is actually a knot, and I should have looked up it's actually a wisdom knot. That's what it is. Yeah. And so the purpose of that is one to tie into kind of the nautical nature of Lodestar with the sextant and the navigating by the night sky. But also then having its own brand of having that wisdom knot was something that was really cool that the brand found. And is I think a little bit more unique than where we started, which was a key in Canva. And it really proved to us like, you can't do this without, like, there's a reason there are professionals.
Yeah. It's a very easy thing to do quickly, whether you're using websites where you can get a logo for $20 or something like that. And in some cases that works, right? But, you know, we were at the point because we were putting this onto a very established brand in Lodestar, we wanted to be very measured about it. So I think that was something I was very happy about the result. And then not only the brand, but then what is the website? How do you interact with it? What are you doing? There were just so many concerns about it. And then the last one, we'll talk about our ultimate announcement on the next episode. But the other decision too was not only do you have this brand, but now you're creating content, right? So what's the voice of Settlewise? How does that compare to Lodestar?
I think the thing we kind of landed on is there's this, with Lodestar, we're always going to be lender facing, right? There's no borrower interaction, but with Settlewise, there is that additional borrower interaction. So we need our digital footprint to represent that. And so with Lodestar, you get a lot of, we do a lot of memes and a lot of fun things, right? Kind of making fun of ourselves as an industry or recognizing things that are funny to mortgage lenders, right? Or things you deal with every day and we deal with every day. But with Settlewise, we wanted to have that still like that fun tone, but go a little bit more educational.
Really. It's a serious younger sibling. Of Lodestar, I think was you had mentioned it in one of our marketing meetings, and I thought that was a really good way of putting it. Like, no, still fun, but like we're focused. You know, maybe the siblings pre-med or pre-law or something. Like, you know, you're dealing with more serious stuff in a title company, and we want to show that expertise and show that, you know, really personality, but also, you know, realize that this is something that is really important.
Yeah, we wanted it to make sure that if as borrowers Googled us, right, they would feel
Yeah.
comfortable giving their information and having that
Yeah.
relationship with us,
Mhm.
even if we view, and we'll talk about this later, as kind of our primary contact is lenders, right? And who we're making this brand for. So awesome.
Great.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining the summer session. Next episode, we're going to talk more about the decision to announce, a little bit more about our content and kind of what we do as we were continuing on this journey.
Awesome. See y'all next week.
Thanks.